Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Friday everybody. Weekend is almost upon us. My apologies in advance. I am once again on a business trip, and this is being filmed in a suboptimal location. There's a bit of an echo. Hopefully it's not too bad for this episode, and it should be back to normal recording conditions tomorrow. Yesterday, Thursday, the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau, that is the Politburo Standing Committee of the party, held a special meeting chaired by General Secretary Xi Jinping himself to, quote, hear a report on COVID-19 responses, discuss and arrange 20 measures to further optimize epidemic prevention and control work, end quote. According to the official readout of the Standing Committee meeting, China will continue to, quote, unswervingly implement the general policy of dynamic zero COVID, end quote, while also, quote, effectively coordinating epidemic prevention and control with economic and social development in line with the requirements of preventing the epidemic, stabilizing the economy, and ensuring safe development, end quote. How should we read this announcement from the Politburo? Well, zero policy is still being prioritized, but at least there is a balancing element now, something that typically only the lower state council had stressed in the past. Initial commentary on the announcement believes that there is no material changes to the overall policy of dynamic zero COVID, but there may be some tweaking to methods and some experimentation. However, as we've discussed before, if Beijing's position is zero COVID, there is very limited space for easing. The meeting also discussed, quote, 20 measures to further optimize epidemic prevention and control work, end quote, but details of these measures have yet to be released. Markets were not very impressed with the announcement. In Thursday trading, the Hang Seng China Enterprises Index slid as much as 2.7% early after falling almost 2% in the previous two sessions. A gauge of Chinese technology stocks in Hong Kong lost more than 3%. In Friday trading, many of these indexes surged, however, reversing losses, but this was likely mostly driven by similar surges in North American capital markets yesterday after the news of lower than expected inflation. Of course, one of the other reasons for poor market performance in Thursday's trading is the worsening COVID situation for China generally, and for the Pearl River Delta mega manufacturing hub of Guangzhou specifically. Yesterday, Thursday, new daily official recognized cases from the previous 24 hours were just shy of 9,000, already incredibly high by mainland China standards. Then today, in an announcement from just an hour before recording, cases surged past 10,000, with over 3,000 infections being reported in Guangzhou, provincial capital of Henan. Guangzhou saw over 2,500 cases, with 95% found in the inner city district of Haizhu. Mass testing and the lockdown of districts affecting millions of people have already been implemented. But tellingly, a citywide lockdown of the type that paralyzed Shanghai for 2 months earlier this year has yet to happen. This could be a sign of confidence in that officials believe a more flexible approach can be achieved this time around. Or it could be a sign of fear, of just how devastating a full citywide lockdown would be for an already shaken national economy. Analysts are watching Guangzhou very closely. Quote, as things stand, it is hard to tell whether Guangzhou will repeat the experience of Shanghai in spring this year. If Guangzhou repeats what Shanghai did in spring, it will lead to a new round of pessimism on China. End quote. International firms, like their domestic counterparts, of course, have already been feeling the pain of zero COVID. This week, Foxconn reported earnings that missed expectations for the third quarter, saying revenue growth will be flat for the current 3 months. We remember that the company is trying to resume full production after a coronavirus flare-up in October triggered a lockdown at its biggest factory in Guangzhou, hitting Apple's supply of iPhones. With this now renewed surge in cases in Guangzhou, this will likely present fresh issues for the massive iPhone maker. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit that like button. And as always, anyone who can go that extra mile and help me keep China Update sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. I rely primarily on your guys' subscriber support to keep China Update going, so this is a huge help. Thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. Okay, next up, let's move through developments on the semiconductor front, part of a greater unfolding technology competition between Washington and Beijing. Leading Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC is expanding its operations in the United States with the recent announcement of a multi-billion-dollar Arizona factory expansion to produce ultra-advanced 3-nanometer chips. The company's move comes after Washington agreed to provide large semiconductor subsidies for firms bringing advanced manufacturing to U.S. soil. Being a Taiwan-based company in the critical industry suggests that there are geopolitical considerations too. TSMC first announced plans to produce 5-nanometer chips at its new Arizona facility about 2 years ago. The production of 3-nanometer chips represents a significant expansion of these original plans. The plant is expected to start mass production in 2024. Meanwhile, moving to another theater of this technology competition, the German government has blocked a subsidiary of Chinese chipmaker Sai Microelectronics Inc. from acquiring a domestic car chip fab. According to a Thursday exchange filing, German Elmos Semiconductor SE was planning to sell the production line, which manufactures 350-nanometer chips used mostly in cars, to Sweden-based Selex Microsystems AB, which is owned by China's Sai Microelectronics. In a Wednesday briefing, the German Vice-Chancellor and Economic Affairs Minister told media that Berlin prevented a sale because of, quote, concerns about the acquisition of key infrastructure, end quote, adding, quote, in the semiconductor sector, in particular, it is important to us to protect the technological and economic sovereignty of Germany and also Europe, end quote. Coming so soon after German Chancellor Scholz's visit to the People's Republic of China, this move will likely be ruffling some feathers in Beijing. This also comes hot on the heels of the Canadian government last week ordering 3 Chinese miners to divest from lithium projects in the country, citing national security concerns over the supply of critical materials. Meanwhile, China's top chip maker, SMIC, has warned on the negative impact from US export controls after posting flat third-quarter revenue, with the Chinese firm expressing this week, quote, sluggish demand in the smartphone and consumer electronics sectors, coupled with the need for some consumers to take time to interpret new US export control regulations, means that fourth-quarter revenue is expected to decline 13 to 15%, end quote. Earlier this week, we discussed the news that US graphics chip giant NVIDIA Corp has found a workaround with US export controls to China by offering a new advanced but reduced-speed chip. Yesterday, analysts with Chinese financial media outlet Caixin explored this development. We remember that the A800 GPU serves as an alternative to the A100 model. It was initially expected that this alternative chip should meet most application scenarios and mitigate NVIDIA's sales hit to China. Before the US export restrictions, China accounted for roughly a quarter of the firm's revenues. Caixin analysts appear to agree. Quote, the slower speed will not have a significant effect on most current applications, and the impact will be mainly on memory-intensive applications. In some extreme data center applications, the difference in transfer rate will be obvious, and it is possible that multiple A800 chips will be needed to achieve the effect of one A100 chip. As Chinese clients are concerned about possible future inclusion of the A800 in the US export ban, sales of the new devices are expected to be brisk, end quote. Meanwhile, Singapore's Minister of Foreign Affairs this week has called for open supply chains, more smart competition, and a ceasefire in the escalating Sino-American technology war. Singapore may also be posturing for an advantageous position. Quote, we believe that a more stable, constructive, and peaceful configuration is for both the US and China to have overlapping circles of friends. What we need is a network, as wide and inclusive a multilateral network as possible, that facilitates the coexistence and collaboration between competing technological stacks. End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. My apologies again for the poor audio quality. There's quite an echo at this location, but I hope it was still okay. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.